Spare. Batman. Fear is a tool. They think I'm hiding in the shadows, but I am the shadows.
Oh, that's quite enough of that. Yes, rather strange chapter, but you'll find out what I'm talking about shortly. We continue, of course, with Spare and the analysis of what Harry has written. It's now January 2016. Yes, the year on which along came a spider. But before we get to that, it's tra-la-la, back to America. He goes there with two good mates. His mate Thomas, who was dating a woman who lived in Los Angeles, so the first stop was her house. There was a welcome party. Everyone was on the same page about alcohol, apparently, in other words, committed to consuming large amounts of it in a short time. He then explains that there's a disagreement. He asked for a gin and tonic, but instead it was, no, have a tequila. He was familiar with tequila, but mostly club tequila, late night tequila, but now he's been offered proper tequila, fancy schmancy tequila, and he's been schooled in all the many ways of drinking it. Neat, rocks, margarita, splash of soda and lime. And he said he felt rather good for drinking it all. He said it was a strange time to be pro-American because most of the world wasn't, certainly not Britain. Apparently many Brits despised the American war in Afghanistan and resented being dragged into it. He was reminded of his childhood when people warned him all the time about Americans, too loud, too rich, too happy, too confident, too direct, too honest. But he didn't agree with that. He felt that Yanks didn't beat about the bush. They didn't fill the air with polite snorts and throat clearings before coming to the point. Whatever was on their mind, they would spit it out, like a sneeze. And whilst that could be problematic at times, he usually found it to be preferable to the alternative, which was nobody saying what they truly felt, no one wanting to hear how you felt. He said he'd experienced that at 12 years old, and he was experiencing it all the more now that he was 31. The next day he woke with no hangover, and the next day, or the day after, they moved and went to the home of Thomas's girlfriend, to the home of Courtney Cox. And she was a friend of Thomas's girlfriend and had more room. And apparently she was travelling, was away on a job, and didn't mind if they crashed at her place. As a Friends fanatic, the idea of crashing at Monica's was highly appealing and amusing. But then Courtney turned up, and he was confused. He didn't know if this meant that they had to leave. She said, no, of course not. There's plenty of room to stay. But then he says he was still confused because she was Monica and he was Chandler, and he wondered if he'd ever work up the courage to tell her. Was there enough tequila in California to get me that brave? Courtney invited more people over. There was another party, and there was somebody who looked familiar. It was an actor, and there was his friend told him that it was an actor, and Harry said, yes, I know he's an actor. What's his name? But his friend couldn't remember. He went over and talked to the actor. He was a friendly sort, and I liked him straight away. I still couldn't place his face or call up his name, but his voice was even more vexingly familiar. I whispered to my mate, where do I know this guy from? My mate laughed, Batman. Sorry? Batman. I was into my third or fourth tequila, so I was having trouble understanding and processing this remarkable bit of new information. Fuck, yes, Batman Lego movie. I turned back to the actor and asked if it was true, and he said that he was. And then he said, do what? Do the voice. The actor shut his eyes, wanted to say no, but he didn't want to be impolite. Harry doesn't name who the actor is, but I think, if I'm not mistaken, it's Will Arnott. Anyway, he apparently fixed Harry with his ice blue eyes and then said, hello, Harry, in Batmanese. And then Harry, of course, was delighted by this and asked for him to do it again, which, of course, is not such a surprise that Harry would get all excited about somebody doing this. And then he went to the fridge and found a box of Black Diamond mushroom chocolates. Somebody said that they were for everybody. So they grabbed a few of them, gobbled them, washed them down with tequila. And they waited for Batman to indulge as well, but he didn't. Not his thing, apparently. And then they went outside and they waited, and then he went back into the toilet, And he said it was hard to navigate the house with its angular modern furniture and clean glass surfaces. And then he's describing what it was all like, and then he went to the bathroom. And this is when, of course, he has the experience of talking to a pedal bin. He explains that he stepped on the pedal and the head opened its mouth, a huge open grin. That he laughed, he turned away, took a piss. Now the loo became a head too. The bowl was its gaping maw, the hinges of the seat were its piercing silver eyes. I finished, flushed, closed its mouth. And then he went back to the silver bin and he fed it an empty cigarette packet from his pocket. Open wide. Ah, thank you, mate. You're welcome, mate. And then he walked into his friend thereafter, outside, telling him about the experience of talking to the pedal bin, obviously while stoned. And he explained he couldn't describe it. He said, you have to experience it for yourself, and meeting Batman pales by comparison. He then went off to make himself a tequila, and his mate appeared and said that Harry's puffer jacket that he had become a dragon, and that the dragon had tried to eat his friend. And interestingly, Harry remarks that his delightful trip had been his friend's hell. And he said he took his friend outside and everything would be okay. The next day, in actual fact, it wasn't the case that he was stoned, but rather that he was tripping as a consequence of taking mushrooms. And the next day, they went to another party, and there's more tequila, and there were more mushrooms. And then he had a joint, and he said, lovely, took a hit of it, and somebody said they wanted him to meet Christina Aguilera. And he said she looked rather mannish, which is not particularly nice of him to say that. But apparently he'd misheard. It wasn't Christina Aguilera. It was the man who co-wrote one of her songs. Fantastic, Harry. Well done, making yourself look a bit of a dimwit again. And then we just get a bit of a recollection about the lyrics of that. And then apparently they went back to Monica's, Courtney's that was. And he stared at the moon, and he felt that it was talking to him like the bin and the toilet. And then he explained that the year ahead would be good. Good how? Something big. Really big. Not more of the same? No, something special. Really, Moon? Promise. Please don't lie to me. He was staring 32 in the face, and something had to change. This, of course, is a revision of history. I very much doubt that he was stood there talking to the moon, with the moon telling him that something good was going to happen. Perhaps at this point, Harry's wife has crept in again and has commandeered the laptop. Because, of course, that's the end of part 2. And part 3 comes, and it's labelled Captain of My Soul. And there's a picture of Harry's wife looking like she's going to suck the face off Harry as she is on her tiptoes, kissing him with her arms around him, pulling him in. He has his hands down by his side and looks less than enamoured. Oh no, he's got one arm around her. His left arm, couldn't quite see that. But all of this talking to the moon nonsense, that's another revision of history that has been put in there by Harry's wife to make it look like she is hugely important. That ends part 2. And Harry's wife is on the horizon. So it'll be interesting in the forthcoming chapters what we learn with regard to what he describes with his involvement with her, and basically how much of it is revised to make her look absolutely amazing and wonderful as a consequence of the start of the Golden Period. Join me there.